Have you ever tried to study so hard with all the crazy formulas, but then on the next day exam you could not remember anything? But why did your friends study them so easily? In this video, I will tell you about the mechanism of forming memories, which hopefully will help you to study better. With about 86 billion neurons, our brains amazingly create memories. Here is the model of a neuron. It has three main parts: the soma, cell body, where the nucleus is and protein synthesis happens. The dendrites receive the nerve signals and transfer them to the soma. Finally, the axon carries the nerve signals away from the soma and sends them to the adjacent neurons. The ends of the axons are called the axon terminal. On some neurons, there are also myelin sheaths that cover the axon. Anyway, I will talk further about them in another video. Now, let's have an example of how we have memories. Imagine that you are relaxing on a bench when your best friend suddenly appears and punches into your face. The first thing you realize is the pressure of her fist. Through a special mechanism, an action potential is created in the nearest sensory neuron. So what is an action potential? At the resting state, when your face hasn't been punched, that neuron has negative membrane potential, about -70 millivolts, which means the inside of a neuron is more negative than the outside. When there is an action potential, the membrane potential becomes more positive, which is the perfect condition for the voltage-gated sodium channels to open. The sodium ions concentrate in the outside more, so when these channels open, sodium ions flush into the neuron causes the membrane potential to rise dramatically. After about a millisecond, the voltage-gated potassium channels open. On the contrary to sodium, potassium ions concentrate more in the inside of the neuron. Thus, potassium ions flow outward. Additionally, the voltage-gated sodium channels close, so the membrane potential becomes much more negative, even more than the resting potential at the beginning. After a while, the voltage-gated potassium channels close too, through passive ion channels and sodium-potassium pumps, which force sodium and potassium ions back to the previous size. By using the ATP energy, the membrane potential gradually rises back to the resting potential. This process happens over and over on the axon as a chain. When the electrical impulse reaches the axon terminal, we call that place as synapse. The sending signal neuron is the presynaptic neuron and the receiver is the postsynaptic neuron. If the synapse is electrical, the impulse passes through normally. On the other hand, if the synapse is chemical, the voltage-gated calcium channels open, which allows calcium ions to flow into the cell. They activate and change the shape of calcium-sensitive proteins adhered to vesicles that contain neurotransmitters. As the result, the vesicles fuse with the membrane and release the neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft. Some of them will bind to the chemical receptors on the postsynaptic neuron's membrane, which leads to the action potential in the postsynaptic neuron. By that way, the neural signals are transferred over many neurons to the responsible region of the brain. What is most interesting is that every time an impulse passes through the synapse is strengthened. At the resting state, the mRNA in synapse that synthesizes proteins is locked up by a microRNA and other protein. Only when there is an action potential, one of those locking proteins becomes degraded. This allows the RNA to be free to synthesize new proteins that build up the synapses. So every time you think about that accident, the circuit of neurons that the electrical impulse once passed will be strengthened. Hence, that memory will last longer. In a nutshell, every time you learn or practice something, the synapses responsible for that memory are strengthened. That's why if you start to work hard since right now, the light of success will surely shine on you.